Hey everyone, Thyworm here, bringing you a solo self-found guide for synthesized maps. I will talk about why it is good about the loot, what to expect, how to run them, and much more. Synthesized maps are a remnant of the Synthesis League. They've got the distant memory name in all of them except the Cortex, because to most people it is a distant memory. We're getting old, that is. I'm sure there are some lore reasons for this name as well. But why run these maps? Well, a few reasons in solo self-found. First, they drop plenty of loot. Both the monsters in the maps and the bosses have an interesting drop pool which includes synthesized items. These aren't exclusive to synthesized maps anymore, but it is still a good source for getting them. Synthesized items have multiple implicits, which can make them very powerful, and one honorable mention, although I haven't dropped any it seems, as I've not killed the monsters in the maps a whole lot, is the Magnum Opus Divination card, which provides a random piece of gear with 3 implicit synthesized modifiers. Such an item can be incredible, or a piece of garbage. Most likely it'll be a piece of garbage, but hey, you never know. Second, the regular synthesized maps drop the Cortex map around 10% of the time. In the Cortex map, you find Pinnacle boss Venarius, who drops the Bottled Faith, a flask that enables plenty of crit-based builds, and he also drops a lot of other interesting loot. Third, you need to have the Maven witness all of the synthesis bosses for the Forgotten Maven invitation. Plenty of reasons to run the content, so let's dive in. For prerequisites, you need the maps, of course. These synthesized maps have a very small chance to drop from tier 11 plus map bosses, and sometimes they are sold by Kirak or Tujin. You can increase the chance with the Atlas passive tree. There's also a scarab, the influencing scarab of conversion, that gives dropped maps a chance to drop as a Guardian Conqueror or synthesized map. Quite a few maps I ran came from testing this scarab. And finally, using the Justified Ambition Divination card, which drops from the Conqueror bosses, you can also get one. A final way to get these maps is using Kirak missions, but then you won't be able to have the Maven witness the bosses, plus the Atlas tree doesn't work on Kirak maps, so I am not covering that in this video. Kirak missions with synthesized maps are only worth running to drop the Cortex in my opinion. Normally I have a section that says how the strategy works, but I wouldn't call this too much of a strategy honestly, but what I've done at least is I've run 10 sets of synthesized maps. That is 40 synthesized maps and then 10 of the Forgotten Invitations. I've stored all of the significant loot in this stash tab, which I will go over in the loot breakdown. I've used an updated version of my boss rushing Atlas tree, which focuses on dropping maps, getting influenced maps from map bosses, and it has the Maven on it as well. I've already covered this mostly in another video, so I will link to the tree and I will link to that video, but I will not go into it today. By request, I've made a Google Doc on the SSF trees and other useful information, which gets updated every now and then, so check that out. It is all in the description of the video. But how do these maps work? Well, as soon as you put in a synthesized map in the map device and you run it, you will notice a few things. You can't apply scarabs to it, and the map picks a bunch of modifiers at random. This can lead to sometimes very difficult maps and sometimes tons of loot, or vice versa. As the map is level 81, which is equivalent to a tier 14 map, the maps themselves tend to be not that difficult. The bosses in it have very few abilities. Just don't stand in the blue beams, black puddles on the ground, or get hit by a bunch of balls. That is basically it. You should have no issues completing these maps, that's all I'm saying. I'm very well aware that 40 maps is a rather limited dataset, but it is solo self-found, guys. I can't just run hundreds of these, they're very hard to get. Anyway, the loot is incredibly consistent as it turns out, so I think not too much would have changed if I ran another 40. Here's what I got out of it. I've gathered 48 synthesized rings, that is 40 from the bosses as they always drop 1, and another 8 of them from the 10 invitations. There are 5 versions, each centered around a damage type and the corresponding herald. Their rings provide mana reservation and buff effect, among other related mods, which is cool if you happen to play a Herald build. On top of this, they have 1 to 3 synthesized implicit modifiers. These are a total crapshoot, but some of these implicits are actually good. You can get some absolutely broken rings from this if you're lucky. You get more synthesized items though, primarily a whole bunch of random gear, and to illustrate that I stored these gloves. But more so, from time to time, you get synthesized jewels, and those are very powerful. Jewels normally don't have implicits unless you corrupt them, but then you can't craft on them anymore. With these synthesized jewels, you still can craft, making them very useful in Solo Self-Found. Next to this, I've gained 2 other influenced maps from the invitations. This is mostly to indicate that other influenced maps don't drop from this run pretty much. This is very different when doing other invitations, like the one with the Minotaur in it. Then you drop tons of these maps, but in this case you don't. It's quite rare. Furthermore, I got 2 awakened support gems from 40 witnessed bosses and 10 invitations. That's 1 in 20 or a 5%-ish drop rate, but here the small data set hurts a bit of course. Could be much less, could be much worse than 5%. Still, it is great that you get these things to begin with from simply running the content. I got a random Orb of Conflict as well, which is what you get from Maven invitations. Then, from those same invitations, you get Crescent Splinters, and 10 of these turn into a Maven's Writ, which can be used to fight the Maven Pinnacle boss. This means that you get between 5 to 6 splinters per invitation, and that is exactly what happens if you run the invitation with between 50 to 80% item quantity. Since this league, Kirak just offers the invitation, and you can use Orbs of Alchemy and Chaos Orbs to craft the invitation and put a bunch of map mods on it. Finally, I dropped 9 Cortexes. That's almost 1 in 10. These maps used to be incredibly rare, and since this league they drop a ton. So take advantage of that, fight Venarius and get some interesting loot. And that's it for the synthesized maps. That is all there is to it, really. Let me know if I forgot something in the comments. I will pin anything that I forgot. I hope you try out this strategy. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions for future content. Subscribe and like for more Path of Exile SSF content. Thanks so much for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.